They say you've gotta have heart. But whoever they were, they clearly weren't talking about Hart House, a vegan fast food restaurant founded by comedian Kevin Hart. Despite the best intentions, the chain was so short-lived, it's likely you never even heard of it before it blinked out of existence forever. So what went wrong? Well, today we're cracking the ribs on the sudden death of Hart House, Kevin Hart's vegan fast food restaurant. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other bygone fast food chains you would like to hear about. Okay, time for some food that was too fast. Born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on July 6, 1979, Kevin Hart began his career as a stand-up comedian, getting booed regularly, and would later recall one performance during which a particularly dissatisfied crowd pelted him with chicken. From those humble beginnings, Hart rose to become one of the most popular comedic actors of the past decade, after a string of hit comedy albums and roles in popular movies like Jumanji and The Secret Life of Pets. In 2015, Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in the world. So it's no surprise when he set out to use some of that influence to convince people to live a little healthier. To quote the self-proclaimed health nut, "Being healthy is important to me because you get one life, unless you're a cat from one of his pet movies." To that end, he routinely exercises 6 to 7 times a week, while doing his best to stick to a healthy diet that includes things like brown rice, baked chicken, vegetables, and salads. But Hart didn't just intend to lecture people about being healthier, he wanted to actually help them do it. So in 2020, right in the middle of the global pandemic, he decided to open his own restaurant chain. Hart would then spend the next year in meetings and focus groups going over every conceivable detail of the business, from the color scheme of the menu to the consistency of the salad dressing. In his own words, everything was a process. That process finally paid off in August of 2022, when he opened up the very first Hart House fast food restaurant. Hart House looked a lot like any other fast food burger joint, but working closely with chef Mike Salem, former head of culinary innovation at Burger King, Hart had come up with a menu that was entirely plant-based. According to Hart, the idea behind Hart House was to give people an alternative to fast food. As he put it, the chain was intended to be an option for people who have curiosity about plant-based foods but don't necessarily have the locations to go for it or know where to look. If you've been going to restaurants for long enough, you probably know that Kevin Hart was far from the first celebrity with absolutely no relationship to the food industry who decided to open a restaurant. Way back in 1967, for example, actor Dan Blocker, who played Eric Hoss Cartwright on the cowboy adventure show Bonanza, became a co-founder of the Bonanza Steakhouse chain. And the following year, cowboy movie star Roy Rogers licensed his name to a fast food chicken chain. In 1985, singer-songwriter Jimmy Buffett opened up the first Margaritaville, named after his 1977 hit, in Key West, Florida. Today, they even have a location in Jurassic World. A few years later, Buffett opened a second chain called Cheeseburger in Paradise, after his 1978 hit. But the celebrity restaurant chain fad really exploded in 1991. When Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and Bruce Willis joined forces to open the Planet Hollywood chain. And that same year, Kenny Rogers opened the once fairly impressive but now mostly defunct Kenny Rogers Roasters chain. And that's all just the tip of the iceberg. In 2011, actor Mark Wahlberg joined forces with his brother Donnie, famously of New Kids on the Block, and his other brother Paul, who was a chef, to open the Wahlburgers franchise. In 2012, rockers Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley of Kiss opened up the first Rockin' Brews in Los Angeles. In 2016, rapper Ludacris opened up his first chicken and beer restaurant, named for his 4th studio album, at an airport in Atlanta, Georgia. And that same year, movie tough guy Danny Trejo opened his first donut shop in Hollywood. They are the most intimidating donuts money can buy. So, a comedian like Kevin Hart trying to get into the restaurant business isn't really as out there as it sounds. In fact, considering that Bruce Willis and Demi Moore once bought an entire town in Idaho and tried to remake all its businesses in their own image, hey, we did an episode on that. Opening a fast food place with a simple, straightforward concept seemed quaint by comparison. The very first Hart House was located in the maze of hotels, parking lots, and rental car places that surround scenic LAX airport in Los Angeles, California. It was a smart place to put it because it's a highly trafficked area that's dotted by fast food burger places like In-N-Out, Carl's Jr., and Burger King. and anybody looking for a more plant-based option would be relatively hard up to find one. And it looked, for the most part, like any other fast food place, only with a much greener color palette. It was also maybe a little nicer than your average fast food place. At least one reviewer, for example, felt that it successfully combined the quick service of a fast food joint like Chick-fil-A with the atmosphere of a fast casual place like Shake Shack. But just like your average McDonald's, it had a counter to order at, friendly-faced servers at registers to take orders, and giant menus on the wall above advertising various combo meals. For those on the go, it had a drive-through window. And for those who wanted to dine in, it had an area that included a handful of two-seat tables, booths along the walls, and one large round table for groups, and some counter-style seating as well. The menu was mostly plant-based substitutes to burgers and chicken sandwiches, and those burgers were spelled with cloyingly cute apostrophes. They bore a familiar resemblance to their meat counterparts, but were actually made from things like soy, pea, protein, and wheat, and were fried in sunflower oil. If burgers and sandwiches wasn't your thing, they had two different types of salad, Caesar and Kale Crunch. There were also sides like fries, tots, and frats, which were a mix of both. As far as beverages, there were various juices and sodas, bottled water, 4 different flavors of shake, and for dessert, there were a few varieties of cookie. Hart House even had a side menu listing all possible allergen-related modifications. They really went the extra mile. Reviews of Hart House were all over the map. Food critic and TikTok influencer Keith Lee, who's not generally a fan of vegan food, gave it a shot at the request of Hart himself and came away loving it. He raved about the fries and the Oreo shake and said he wouldn't have known his burger wasn't meat if he hadn't been told. A reviewer for Takeout.com, on the other hand, who said he had no problem eating vegan cuisine like Beyond Meat or Impossible Burgers, thought the food was just plain bad. He found his plant-based burger patty to be the softest he ever had, and compared chewing the fake chicken nuggets to the experience of eating a wet sponge. That being said, he did like the spicy chicken sandwich and the milkshakes. A reviewer for TheBeat.com came down right in the middle, showing up at the original Hart House on opening day. She thought most of the food tasted like it had been sitting around a while, and resolved to try again when the place was less busy. But regardless of the reviews, the people behind Hart House had big plans. Over the following year, the chain would expand quickly, and by 2023, it would have locations in Monrovia, Hollywood, and on the campus of the University of Southern California. But that was really just the beginning, or at least it was supposed to be. In an interview given that year, Hart House's Chief Development Officer, Patrick Chamberlain, boasted that the chain planned on having 100 locations open by 2025 and aimed on being a household name to consumers within the decade. To that end, they were making deals to open an additional 45 locations across California. Riding trends that indicated people were eating less meat, it seemed for a while like Hart House had a good shot at being a major disruptor and a huge success in the fast food industry. And then, one day, it suddenly flatlined. The demise of Hart House came in September of 2024, when all 4 locations closed forever, without warning to their patrons. To date, no specific explanation for the sudden shutdown has been given. The closest thing the company made to an official statement was a September 10th Instagram post that simply read, "Thank you to our teams, guests, and community, who helped make the change we all craved. A heartfelt goodbye for now as we start a new chapter." While we may not have an official post-mortem, other restaurants that have closed over the past few years have all had the same challenges in common. For starters, far more established restaurants weren't able to survive the COVID-19 lockdown. So opening a new chain during that period and trying to grow it in the difficult years that followed was probably difficult. Not that it would have been a cakewalk otherwise. Even on a normal day, the fast food business is one of the most competitive industries on the planet. Even places that aren't betting the farm on a risky all-vegan menu have a very small chance of success. The chain's rapid expansion was also a high-risk move, especially given that Hart House chose to open locations in highly competitive and costly areas of Los Angeles. There was no real margin of error, which may have left the company without enough time to work out the kinks and adjust to the demands of the marketplace. Also, it's worth mentioning that Los Angeles is already one of the most vegan-friendly cities in the United States, so diners had plenty of options before Hart House opened its doors. Despite the novel idea of an entirely meatless fast food joint, Hart House was facing stiff competition from all sides. And finally, recent trends in the Los Angeles dining scene indicate that Angelenos may be increasingly turning away from plant-based foods and eating more meat again. So it also may have been a case of wrong place, wrong time. Maybe he should have opened an all-meat vegan restaurant. So what do you think? Would you have eaten at Hart House? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other weird history food videos.